Alright, so I have come back to this Spider-Gwen, finally. And I'm going to change over to lighter pencil, I think, here. I did that before in 0.8. And go to the black. It should be lighter. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so on the last update I did of this video, let me see here, pull this down, there we go. It's probably not all gonna get in there, but I have 523 views as of this, as of, I don't know, January 2018, and I got 9 likes on that, and I got 1 dislike. This isn't exactly gonna maybe be like, oh no, it's the end of the world, someone dislikes this, right? No, that's it. It always tells me something's up, like somebody didn't disagree with something in that video. I wish they would have left a comment on what it was, but it made me go back and examine the video again, and I realized, this thing is titled How to Draw a Spider-Gwen, right? I had started drawing off, let me pull it down here. I had started drawing off here. So what happened was I was just sketching, and I was like, wait a minute, maybe I should show people like how I do this kind of thing, right? Where I'm like grabbing the figure and, doing a little bit of the structure, but I had started from this point. So I think because it was a how to draw, and I didn't start from just, a blank piece of paper, I'm going to start off part 2 right and try to correct that mistake that I obviously didn't show how I got to this point. I remember somewhere in here, let me see if I could find it, right there. I started showing a little bit of the structure of what I was going after, but that's not exactly the same thing. So what I'm going to do here real quick is put another layer over this one and drop the original drawing down in opacity and draw over it and show how I arrived at this actual drawing. And then hopefully that will, maybe not totally discourage anybody from seeing this in the future. And also, next time I do something like this where I'm actually in the middle of a sketch and I decide to film, I'm just going to literally show exactly how I got to that point that I'm at. Maybe even use the one that I draw over with, the overlay drawing as the actual drawing instead of starting off with something that's pre-sketched, basically. So yeah, just a little bit of thought on where I'm at on part 2 of this. So I'm pretty much just gonna have fun with this one, or else I'm gonna over-examine it and I'm gonna think it's some kind of, I don't know, something it's not supposed to be, some kind of magnificent, amazing, super cool freaking piece. And that's not the goal, really. So, okay, I think that should be a good size showing up on screen. So, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to drop this one down in opacity. There we go. I really hope that shows up on everybody else's screens. Then I'm going to add a new layer. I'm just going to title this one Overlay real quick. Okay, so how I did this was I went in and chose, which I briefly touched upon in the first part. I choose like a line of action kind of thing, right? Like, what do you want to get out of the figure, right? So in this case, I wanted this action right here. I wanted her to have, a flowing action, because I was intending to either put part of a building or, down below here, show a part of a building that she is coming, she's flying up and over this thing. That was what I had pictured in my mind. And I think I sort of touched upon that earlier. or in the last one. So I'm just going to leave that there. So what I was doing with this part was you go in and you grab, you take your shape and start with the oval. And then what I'll do is I'll throw in the chest cavity, right? Where in the heck am I going to place the chest? So since I know she's going to be doing this kind of thing, let's just go ahead and leave this way up here for now. Since I know she's going to be doing this diving motion, right? She's going to be coming up and arching over, sort of like an Olympic diver almost. More like that, a little bit more of a crook to it. Because what I'm after is, if you sort of squint, you can see that there's this formation like this, right? And ultimately, that's what I'm after. I'm trying to find, just this outline shape of a character that is like got a lot of action going on. Here's the shoulders, boom, right? And then going through the spine, and then straight down the legs. And I could redraw this and probably actually even capture a little bit more of that, maybe even make the legs trail off a little bit smaller. But where I was at on this piece at the time is trying to capture that same hook, right? So I put the head, I just placed the head anywhere, whatever. You can always lasso tool out the head and move it around. So then after I get that, back to the chest, right? So I know I'm going to have the chest right in here because she's going up to the left. Here's the, she's facing this way. So it's essentially going to be, here's the center line on this whole sphere and the egg shape, right? So then you're going to have the same center line, but wherever this chest is, after her neck, of course, which is going to be back there somewhere in this area, but we're not going to be able to see that. You can tell because here's the front of the face, right? So you know that the back of the skull is going to be right around here. You can draw an oval down the back side of her head. And you know that the back of her skull is going to be where that sphere ends. Back there. And her neck is going to come up and connect to the base of the skull, right? That's why we can't see the neck, because it's all tucked back there in this whole mess. So then you have that chest. We can go ahead and lay that. This part is actually going to be more just rounded without the breasts kind of thing on there, right? So it's just going to go straight like this, and then you're going to see a little bit of the rib cage back there where right before her abs and stomach and all that kind of stuff begins, which depending on the angle you may not even see this at all. I put it there because of this shape, literally. This shape right here can be called the line of beauty. I don't remember where David Finch got that from, but that's one of the things that he and a lot of other artists use, and you'll see it in Silvestri's and stuff a lot too, Mark Silvestri. And if you can capture that line of beauty, it helps add a little bit of motion, a little bit of elegance to something. So that's where I was heading with that. You don't absolutely have to show the ribs. No, if you're going to try to be completely realistic, all of this stuff is probably going to cover up everything there, right? But that's not what we're after. We're after something that shows, movement and zip and style and all that kind of stuff. So now that we know, here's the back of the rib cage, right? Here's the front. Then we know that the collarbone is going to come, like here's the base of her neck down in there. So we know the collarbone's going to be somewhere in here, right? Because it's going to be down wherever the middle of the rib cage part is. Because there's her neck, right? So it looks more like, actually, whoops, that was a little bit too much. I need a soft eraser there. There we go. So it looks like the neck is probably going to be right here, because you can see the rib cage if I go like that. So So the neck came down there. So then we know, collarbone's going to be straight in front of where that spine comes down, right? So you go like that, and you draw the collarbone like that. And then that's the top part of the collarbone, by the way. And then you know that the shoulder bone is going to be sitting under there somewhere, right? Sits right underneath that little piece that comes up like that. So this one should probably be more here, honestly, than it is there. And then all I do is just do, the whole perspective of a tube, whatever it may be that you're drawing on, right? And it's usually a useful idea if you're drawing two cylinders, like if this elbow was really, really bent, you would have another cylinder there. And then you would go down if this arm was still going off into the distance, that is. And you always just sort of picture a ball in between the two. It's the cup and ball theory, thing. You have a ball, and if you have a cup on top of it, the cup's going to look like that, right? And then whatever way the other joint is going, you're going to connect that cup off in that direction. But they're always going to revolve around that joint area, because you're not going to sit there and draw the bones unless you're drawing a skeleton. Okay, so I'm going to try to keep this video series, until this drawing is done, around 15 minutes. So I'm going to try to talk a little bit, add a little bit more really quick and just get moving on this, and then call it at 15 minutes and then come back to it again. And don't worry, it won't be another 2 years before I finish it, before I come back to it again. I'll be back to this one pretty soon. I'm making a lot of these now, so yeah, I'll be back to it in just in so many days. And so where we were at was we're heading back here with the arm, right? So all I'm trying to get is a rough idea of, okay, I know I got my shoulder bone coming up underneath this clavicle bone, right? And then I'm just very roughly throwing in my shapes of my bones, literally just the structure. And then you go through and you grab, okay, this is how much flesh would be on here, this is how big I want our arms to be, and then you just go through and sort of flesh that over. And since I would be digitally inking this myself, because you got the back of the arm muscle, the shoulder muscle is going to cover that up entirely, right? You're going to have a little bit of the connecting muscle and flesh coming off the shoulder, and you can have a little bit of the bicep, the what is that, the tricep, I think, behind there, and then you're going to go into the the elbow, and then you can have a little bit of the forearm muscle. Same thing on the front here. Again, paying attention to that line of beauty thing, right? And then I'm going back there with her whole, obviously I didn't go to town on those hands, drawing the whole little disappearing deal. So in the hand, I have a video on that too, how I draw these fists and stuff like that. So, and I'll end up doing another one later on. But back to the main parts of the body. So now I know, my neck is here, right? My collarbone is here. This is all behind her head, of course. We're trying to look at the underlying structure here. And then we know that we're going to have the spine sort of rounding up and going back here to the hips somewhere, right? We know it's heading in that direction, obviously. So we say, okay, well, if the hips are, usually you're going to do, what I try to do is this sort of shape like this when I draw hips. Mentally, in my head. I mean, even if I put an oval there, I'm still sort of picturing, I'm still sort of picturing this kind of thing going on. Reason being is because, not because that's what it looks like inside, it's just, this gives me an idea to where now I'm like, okay, I need to throw in the hip bone here, and I need to carry it out, right? And it gives me plenty of space for, if it's male or female, it'll usually still give me plenty of space to be able to throw my legs in there, have an appropriate gap, between the thighs, instead of, both legs coming together, like that kind of thing, looking really weird. So I'll just do that kind of shape. So even though she's at this angle, I can't really draw over that right now because it'll just look like a total mess. I'll do it in a second. But if her hip is this, right, if that's what I draw back there, and I say her center line of her hips is going to be on the same kind of deal, right, as what her skull is, and her rib cage, and then we're going to do the same kind of thing back here wherever we put her hips. Even if you draw a messed up drawing or a perfectly on par drawing, it's all going to be generally the same kind of idea, right? So when we have that, then you just know you take that same kind of shape idea, right, because you're going to have the bones coming out from somewhere. You don't want to have them all messed up. So there's your center line, and you're going to do one of these things, right? Like that, because I've got this body leaning this way, or I've got these hips leaning this way, and then I've got my center line. I'll rotate her. Honestly, at the back end of this right now, it doesn't even matter. I could draw it way the heck up here. Who cares, right? Mostly what matters is, does this crotch line up with the rest of the center line, and does the middle between here and here line up? So because it's like this, if you were drawing a face, right, you have the line all the way over here, you're not going to put the eyes over here, you're not going to put the sockets, come on, that changes the whole center line to over here, right? Same thing with these. You're going to foreshorten a little bit, and you're going to have this one closer to this line, and you can have this one just a little bit further away, just like you would the eyes on this line here. This one will be a little bit closer to the center line, this one will be a little bit further away. Let me get rid of all that. Okay. So we know her spine's going to come over here. Uh-oh, I'm at 17 minutes. Okay, I'll try to get a little bit further, at least finish off to the legs. And we're going to put the spine, okay, we know her rib cage is coming up here, we know this is here, and we're going to say this is the rib cage, this is that line, right? And then we're going to offset the hips by however much we want the hips to stick out beyond the rib cage. If we wanted to cover it up and have her legs going straight down, we would put the hips here and have the center line here, right? Then when you have the hips coming down, look what you got. But in this case, I've chosen to put the hips just a little bit behind here so I don't have to literally come directly from the crotch, right? Because this angle would, you'll get it down as you draw it more, but you're going to find out that if I had done that and I had stuck these legs out here a little bit further, she would have a very long, like that, if that's the back of her spine, if I had gone any further out to the left, this whole midsection between her ribs and here would be extra long if she turned to the side, and then you'd have her legs going down. So we were trying to, not get too crazy on this. So what I'm doing is I'm putting her hips right around here, and then obviously that's going to be the center line of her hips, center line of her chest. And you can rotate this however you want. She could be up this way, she could be up that way, whatever. So that's basically how I'm arriving at this here. So you can see, where's our spine? There's our spine. I'm going to call this the center line, right? Oh, actually, I just realized you can sort of see the middle of it right back there. I'm going to call that the center line. Crotch is going to be up in here, right? Then we're going to have those hips all like that, down in, back up and over, right? I'll draw this a little bit darker so you can see it. And we want the center, or the horizontal line, because I'm talking about that center line, which is actually the vertical one, but then the other one going side to side, right, where we're going to actually place the sockets of her thighs, her femur bone, right? That is going to need to align with wherever you're putting these. Not 100% perfectly. It does not have to be absolutely perfectly because, I mean, come on, can you raise one shoulder and drop a hip and have different angles? Of course you can. And I mean, if we're talking about people like Spider-Man, Spider-Gwen, things like that, you're going to have all sorts of twisting going on. So, does it have to be 100%? You know, do I need this going on? Sure, if I want to have a, you know, more stiff, more level drawing, or whatever you want to call it. If I wanted to have her pulling off some kind of Olympic dive where you know, those kind of lines, you know, in your form do matter, then yeah, that's what you'd go after. I'd, you know, move up her collarbone, adjust her rib cage, and bring this, you know, up here and all that kind of garbage. But I'm not gonna really do that. I like it being slightly off. It doesn't have to be 100% on. Honestly, if I was drawing totally photorealistic stuff all the time, I probably wouldn't even bother drawing. I'd just go grab a camera, right? So, on her hips, let me get rid of that horizontal line there. So there is the hips that I'm targeting, right? So now we know her bones are going to fall somewhere in this area, right? I'll probably have to adjust it to make it look more appropriate or right. And then we know the other one's going to be there. So then if you want to go in and you want to, you know, draw the butt behind there, right, all that kind of stuff, you can go ahead and do that. If you want to just assume and start drawing down from here, whatever, it's artwork, you know, who's going to stop you? And am I drawing this totally 100% accurate? No, because 100% accurate is boring, as I just said. If I wanted to do that, these legs would be all, you know, it wouldn't look very beautiful or anything like that. It would look very boring. So then we're going to have her leg coming down out of that whole crotch area, right? And then what I'm doing is I'm connecting that to that. And again, you want to pay attention that, you know, on her, I actually have these legs sort of, I debated making them drop straight down originally because I really wanted to, remember that line, that thing I was trying to tell you about before? I really wanted to do one of these, right? But when I was drawing it before I actually started recording, it looked a little, how do you say, it didn't really look like it was flowing, like it was going anywhere. There was like there was very much motion to it. It just sort of looks like she was coming up and bending over, almost like she could just be standing there and nothing would, you know, you couldn't tell the difference, like she could be standing on the ground. So that's why I add a little bit of this lean, and that's why you can see these legs aren't as foreshortened as this shoulder, or the shoulder to elbow area, right? I mean, these are pretty foreshortened, but this isn't as drastically foreshortened. I don't have one of these kind of things going on, right? And again, that's also to add to this whole overall shape right here. I want more action. I don't want it to look like she is coming out from way over here like this, right? Because then I'd have to make her legs really small and everything else. I want to capture this thing coming up, diving over. So it really depends on what you're going after, you know. To serve my purpose of getting this, that's where I chose to go with it. So then you can draw the bone down to the ankle there, right? Adding a little bit of the meat as I go, because why not? I'm going to end up doing it anyways. And then the inside of the ankle is always higher than the outside of the ankle. And then you can go ahead and put, you know, whatever kind of feet you like. If you want totally realistic feet, if you want nice and elegant feet, which is sort of what I'm going after here. Right? I'll do a thing on how to do all that stuff later. In another video, I'll address that kind of stuff. But yeah, and then that whole swing motion thing that I was showing in the video beforehand is just, you know, like this drawing here, for instance. Usually, you're always going to have, let me get rid of that. Usually always going to have a connection between the hips, like this. Right, there's the knee. Where's the other one? If the person's running, it's going to be dropping off into the background, right? Foreshortening going on. Let's make it very obvious right here. We got foreshortening going on, right? That leg's in the background, this one's in the front. Let's say the person's flying. You're always going to have this swing motion going on. So unless the person is in a very, I mean, this really won't be that crazy of a drastic angle. I mean, even if I go ahead and flesh this out right now, right? Say, here's the thigh, here's the hip, here's the butt or whatever, there's the thigh, right? There's all that kind of stuff. Here's the crotch. And then, you know, you're probably going to have the foot back there, blah, blah, all that kind of stuff, right? It's never really going to be too crazy of an angle. The only time it's going to be a super sharp, really weird, crazy angle is if that leg is so far bent back, you know, like that kind of thing. And that's when you get like a more cartoony kind of effect, usually when you start making really drastic bends. But otherwise it's usually going to be a moderate, you know, a bit of a gentle sway here and there between the joints. So I just do that to keep track, you know, give myself a rough area to adhere to, so to speak. You know, once you create a rule, just sort of stick by it, whatever the heck it is. And yeah, I mean, I hope that really gets to the point of what I was trying to, or what I didn't explain in part 1. So now that I think I've corrected that error, we can come back later on and then we'll actually, I can turn that one off now, go back to this one. And that arrived at how I got to this point. So I really hope that clarifies it for anybody that, you know, is sort of feeling deceived by the title of the first one, maybe. I don't know. Nobody really communicated any of that. The only comments that were left actually on that video were all positive. So I'm just trying to help clarify that, and it was, I mean, after a while and then come back to it and watching it, it was pretty obvious that I did not do that. So hopefully that fixes things, and now we will actually be back on track when I come back for the next part of the video. And thank you guys for watching, and yeah, I'll come back to this one soon. Not in 2 years, I guarantee it. I'll come back really soon and finish off this video. All right, thanks for watching.